People are crying out for help all around the world, but quite sadly, these cries are falling on deaf ears as we each selfishly only look out for ourselves, whilst perhaps satisfying only the bare minimums of helping others by donating some cash to charity or doing a bit of community service to feed the lie, the facade to both ourselves and to the world. The lie that we aren't the selfish, self-indulgent, and self-centered people, largely looking out only for ourselves and our own well-being, as each and every one of us in fact are, as we are bred to be. The truth is, 9 out of 10 people are fully aware, regardless of whether this awareness is entirely subconscious, that we live within a game of triumph, in which they know that surface appearance, surface facades, is how they gain the rank they so savagely seek after within this game, sometimes entirely unconsciously. Which is why church becomes nothing more than a weekly routine, as well as chauvinism, or donating to charity, or doing perceptibly nice things for one's peers, or working for the local Lions Club, for example. But the truth remains, the majority of us aren't doing these things because we genuinely care or want to help others. We're doing them because in this game of triumph we live, these are the things one has to do to gain hierarchical rank, or to avoid losing hierarchical rank by provoking the prejudicial judgment of the ignorant people we willingly surround ourselves with. People who we, at least subconsciously, know weight such things over our heads for not stepping up to their example and submitting to the constructs of conformity and unanimity of the game we live, thus the social precedents they set in all their superiority. Then there is the remainder, those that almost always inexorably become the victims of this pursuit of triumph, who have been used and stepped on by others seeking to build their tainted thrones. Lo and behold, billions of people around the world carelessly cast aside, suffering addiction, mental and or emotional instability, living in slums, without homes, committing crime, etc., all of which being a cry for help, yet all of which is presently demonized by the status quo, owned and operated by the same people who have clandestinely put these wounded souls exactly where they are amidst their pursuit of triumph of self, who have made them believe they have to be tough, an asshole, and a bullshitter to survive, who have made them feel so unloved and unappreciated that they dig themselves into a hole of crime, emotional distress, or addiction, further self-fulfilling the titles that have been branded upon them, instilling in them the belief that the world is so selfish and cruel that they feel the only person who will ever look out for them and their well-being is themselves, which, in fact, isn't all that far from the truth, save the occasional pity donation from the fortunate. Do you see? It's the selfishness of mankind. It's learning that everything that we do that can be perceived as better than someone else, we ignorantly and arrogantly use to boost ourselves up onto our pedestals, whilst degrading others for being lazy or weak or generally inferior. Because this is what our status quo teaches us to do. 1, to selfishly limit the perceived degradation directed towards ourselves. And 2, well, how can we make ourselves look better? How can we be better? How can we earn higher hierarchical placement? How can we earn triumph if we aren't making others look inferior to us, thus making ourselves look superior to them? The truth is, we live as incentivized slaves to this despicable hierarchical insanity the darkness has used for millennia to control us. And because of this, we've completely lost touch with our place in the universe. We've lost touch with the truth that what the universe wants more than anything else is for us, its expressions, to be happy and to thrive, not to be the pawns, the brainless and opinionless mechanical gears keeping a tainted system functioning that in fact steals from us our ability to live freely and to have the ability to bask in the same joys the most fortunate of us get to bask in as equals. Which means if painting or playing music or surfing or doing math or science or philosophizing or inventing makes us happy, the universe wants us doing just that. It wants us sharing that expression. And just because the world controlled by the darkness and hierarchy doesn't recognize the worth in our passion, thus refuses to pay us for doing what we are best at and most seek to be better at, doesn't mean that our passion doesn't still have worth to the universe. Doesn't mean we are weak or failing for refusing to submit to the crooked system, to a job in a hierarchy that does nothing but further poison our soul as we conform to the wretched social norms of a selfish, duplicitous, and meretricious society that clandestinely steals from us our ability to pursue our passions, instead teaching us to waste our lives away in the selfish pursuit of the triumph of self. I want to put an emphasis on that point just mentioned with regards to being paid to do our passions versus not. Because we live in a world where some people literally get to play baseball, get to work with dolphins or whales, get to make music, get to hike and explore. Literally not working, but doing what they love. And these people are deemed as successful, and we even envy, look up to, and aspire to be them. Whereas the homeless man who does the same thing, who doesn't work, by which I mean they aren't paid, rather simply lives on the street and plays their guitar, or on a beach to surf, or are the dog whisperer that can train a dog or any animal to do just about anything, we attack and degrade as lazy and inferior, and certainly must be weird, because there must be a good reason why nobody likes them, why we as a society have so carelessly cast them aside. Do you see the ignorance in this? Some of us get to follow our passions and do work that is perceptibly not work at all, whilst others do the same thing, but because they aren't being paid for what they are doing, thus because they aren't submitting to the tainted hierarchical system we ourselves have submitted to, we ignorantly spite them rather than envy them as we do for the people doing the same thing. The only difference is they are being paid and are submitting to the constructs of conformity and unanimity. This is the ignorance that is preached by our so very ignorant status quo, overrun by unsung bullies, egotists, and narcissists in pursuit of nothing but the triumph of self via superiority and dominance. The example in which we so willingly blindly conform to, like the sheeple we in fact are. Thus, these successful people, the most triumphant, those most fervently prostrated to this tainted system, they propagate the rest of us to believe that we are inferior to them and that we should heed their advice, thus their opinions, thus their example, more than anyone else's. Whilst in all our prescribed ignorance from these very people, we ourselves come to be the manifestors of the pain which is poisoning, carelessly casting aside as if they are worthless, roughly a tenth of our population. We are meant to be one cohesive unit, all doing something that makes us happy. Yet, instead, we find ourselves prostrated to a tainted system that makes us into mindless drones that haven't the slightest idea that we don't even know how to think outside of the box we are clandestinely living within. And until we come to terms with this truth, until we learn that the universe wishes for each and every one of our passions and dreams to flourish and thrive, yet for some reason we instead find ourselves submitting to a system of incentivized slavery, one that commands conformity to unanimity and in fact intentionally steals from us our very ability to pursue those dreams and those passions so that some can stake their claims to superiority and thus live like gods, whilst others live like inferior rodents. We will continue to fall as a race.